exactly what this is. You go back anyway. Not because you've forgotten what it costs. You remember precisely, not because you believe this time will be different. Some part of you already knows it will not, and yet the pull is there. The specific, familiar pull toward the specific, familiar thing, the relationship, the pattern, the thought, the behavior that has already shown you what it does to you. Fyodor Dostoevsky was the first person to name this precisely. Not as weakness, not as moral failure, not as a disorder to be treated, as a need, a structural, deeply human need for the thing that destroys. His conclusion was not that this need should be overcome. His conclusion was that it cannot be understood from the outside, only from inside the experience of it, which is where you are right now. The conventional understanding of self-destruction treats it as a failure of will, of discipline, of the rational faculty to override the destructive impulse. The person who returns to the thing that hurts them is, in this understanding, someone who has not yet found the right method for not returning. Dostoevsky's framework says this understanding is wrong at the root, not partially wrong. Wrong about what is actually happening. The person who returns to the destructive thing is not failing to avoid it. They are, in some part of themselves that rarely surfaces into direct acknowledgement, choosing it, not with full conscious knowledge of that choice. But the choosing is real, and the reason is not weakness. It is that the destructive thing provides something the person cannot reliably get any other way. Dostoevsky identified this provision in his own life before he documented it in his characters. He was a compulsive gambler, not despite understanding the mathematics of the casino. He understood them completely. He gambled because the casino, the specific state of being at the table, fully present in the risk, with everything suspended on the outcome, produced an intensity of experience that no other context in his life reliably provided. He described it in letters as the only time he felt fully alive. The awareness of destruction was not incidental to that feeling. It was the source of it. The ordinary life feels thin. The functional life feels managed. The destructive thing feels real, even when, especially when, what is being made real is the destruction itself. Dostoevsky called the interior world from which this need operates the underground. The part of the psyche that cannot be satisfied by what satisfies everyone else. That requires, for reasons specific to each person, a level of intensity that ordinary functional life does not produce. The addiction is not to the destruction. The addiction is to the feeling that the destruction reliably produces, and the destruction has simply become the most dependable route to it. The first example is historical, distant enough to examine without immediate recognition. Dostoevsky himself, at the height of his literary career, in debt to publishers with a young wife and child, would sit at the roulette table for days, losing everything, writing desperate letters home for more money, losing that too. Then, in the letters written immediately after the losses, documenting the experience with a precision that reads less like remorse and more like reportage. The underground man, Dostoevsky's most confessional character, does not describe his self-defeating choices as failures. He describes them as the only moments of genuine freedom available to him, the toothache he refuses to cure, the humiliation he returns to, the suffering he chooses when a better option is demonstrably available. These are not errors, they are assertions, the assertion that a person is more than what is good for them. That freedom includes the freedom to choose against one's own interest, that this freedom, the freedom to go back anyway, is the only proof the underground has that it exists. This is Dostoevsky's most important observation about the compulsion to return. The return is not irrational. It is the most rational act available to someone whose interior life has no other channel for this specific need. The second example is closer. Research on relationship patterns, specifically the documented tendency to recreate the same relational dynamic across different partners, consistently finds that the people most likely to repeat a damaging pattern are not the people who lack self-awareness about it. They are the people who have the most sophisticated self-awareness about it, who can articulate exactly what they do, exactly when they do it, and exactly what it costs, and who return regardless. I know what this is. I can see it happening. I have a name for the pattern and a clear memory of the last time, and I am here again at the beginning of it. Dostoevsky's framework does not call that a failure of awareness. It calls it the most honest description of the mechanism available. The awareness and the compulsion are not in opposition. They coexist. The awareness is simply insufficient to interrupt the need that is driving the return. The third example is the one that closes the distance entirely. There is a thought you return to, not a productive thought, not the kind of thought that builds toward anything, the specific familiar thought about yourself or someone else or something that happened, that you have visited enough times to know precisely what it does to you when you go there, and that you visit anyway. Not because something new has occurred to make the visit worthwhile, because the thought is there, and something in you needs to confirm that it is still there, that the wound is still present, that you can still feel it. That is the underground, operating exactly as designed. Think about the specific thing you return to, not the broad category, the specific instance, the relationship pattern you have been in more than once with different people who share a quality you keep selecting for, the thought that arrives at a certain time of day or a certain emotional state and pulls you into a specific register of experience, the behavior you have interrupted enough times that the interruptions no longer feel like progress. I know what this is. I know how this ends. I am here again. Dostoevsky's framework does not ask you to explain the return. It asks you to stop at that moment and ask one question. What does it provide? Not what does it cost? You know what it costs. What does it provide? The specific quality of experience that the return reliably produces. The intensity, the aliveness, the feeling of being fully present in your own experience in a way that the functional, managed, ordinary life does not produce at sufficient intensity. The proof, and this is the part Dostoevsky documented most precisely, that you are still capable of feeling something, that the underground is still operating, that you have not been entirely absorbed into the performed surface. The wound is mine. The choosing of it is mine. The return to it is the most autonomous thing I do. It is the thing that proves the underground is still there, that I am still there, beneath everything I present. Think about the life you are living when the destructive pattern is dormant. The version of yourself that is functional and meeting obligations and maintaining the surface. And ask whether that life, at full functionality, produces the quality of experience that the destruction produces. Most people, if they answer without softening, will say no. The functional life is sustainable. It is less costly. It does not produce the evidence of being fully alive. And the underground requires that evidence, requires it with a persistence and a precision that willpower cannot match. Because willpower operates at the level of behavior, the underground operates at the level of need. You know exactly what this is. You go back anyway. The question is not whether you will go back. The question Dostoevsky spent his career asking and never fully answered in his own life, is what your life would need to become for the going back to stop being necessary. Dostoevsky did not believe the underground could be collapsed. He believed it was a permanent feature of the psyche, the interior world that cannot be fully domesticated by the exterior one. That requires, for structural reasons and for reasons specific to each person's formation, something the performed surface life cannot provide. His framework does not offer a method for eliminating the compulsion. It offers something more precise, a map of what the compulsion is actually seeking. The person who knows what they are seeking can begin to ask a different question. Not, how do I stop returning to the destructive thing? But, what does the destructive thing provide that nothing else in my current life reliably does? That question is harder. It requires looking at the functional life and naming what is absent from it, not what is wrong with it, what level of experience it is not reaching, what the underground is compensating for. The underground man's tragedy is not that he returns to the wound. It is that he has never asked what the wound is giving him. He knows the return is destructive. He has not asked what the alternative would need to provide to make the return unnecessary, and so he returns with full awareness, with precise knowledge, because the wound is the only place where he consistently feels real. Dostoevsky's most important observation about the compulsion to self-destroy is not about the destruction. It is about the life that makes the destruction necessary. The person who has found sufficient intensity in the non-destructive areas of their existence, whose life produces enough consequence, enough genuine presence, enough evidence of being fully alive, does not need the underground in the same way. Not because they have more willpower, because the compulsion has less work to do. The underground does not disappear when the life becomes sufficient. It becomes quieter, less urgent, less insistent about the specific route it requires. That is not resolution. Dostoevsky never offered resolution. It is the only honest description of what is actually available. But self-destruction is not only about what you return to. It is about what you crave before you have it. Schopenhauer identified the mechanism Dostoevsky only circled, the specific way that desire and suffering share a structure, that wanting the thing and being destroyed by it are not separate experiences, but the same experience in different stages. Why you crave what hurts you, that is next.